Drinking and driving, hey, we know it happens, but what happens if a restaurant employee or somebody else sees someone who appears to have been drinking and they report it, or do they have an obligation to report? And if they do, what's going to happen? Well, that takes us to this week's case. Involves a real case. It arose in Watertown, Wisconsin. And there was a woman working at a McDonald's, and she was working at the drive-thru. Well, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, about the time the bars closed, car came up, silver Subaru. And the woman inside, the driver of the vehicle, ordered some stuff, got it, and then, rather strangely, she got into an argument with the service person at McDonald's and said, hey, that's not my change, I don't want the change, and she drove off. The service person at McDonald's smelled alcohol, and based upon this, she called the local police. Local police dispatched a vehicle that was nearby, and the officer got there, was able to see this silver Subaru at a stoplight just a little ways from the McDonald's. He also, when he made that observation, had the dispatcher still on the phone. The dispatcher still had the McDonald's employee on the phone. The McDonald's employee was able to provide additional information as to the identity of the car, description of the woman who was in the car. Based upon that, the officer stopped the vehicle and administered a field sobriety test. The woman was found to have been drinking, and she was charged and later convicted of drunk driving. Well, when the case went forward, the woman argued, hey, that evidence that the police officer got should never have come in, because he should have never stopped me to begin with. First of all, she argued, if every time somebody smells alcohol around 2 o'clock in the morning when the bars are closing, and they report that to the police and the police act, they're going to be overwhelmed with all kinds of investigation. 2, well, they didn't prove that I was in any kind of real imminent danger myself, or that I was producing a hazard to the public. They didn't indicate that I was driving bizarrely or anything else. On the other side, the DA argued, said, no, that evidence comes in, and it comes in because, 1, the service person at McDonald's spelled alcohol. 2, the conduct was rather bizarre when you refused to take the change. And 3, well, you were the actual driver of the vehicle. Based upon that, the officer had good cause to stop you and do a field sobriety test. Well, at trial, the judge let that evidence in, and the woman was convicted, as I said. So she took it up on appeal, went up on appeal, and in there, the appeal court looked at these arguments, and they said, you know, we've got to look at the totality of things, look at the overall picture. Yes, the argument's been made that alcohol alone and the odor of alcohol alone would not be sufficient, but in this instance, we had those 3 items that the DA argued: the presence of the smell of alcohol, bizarre behavior, and being able to identify the person as the actual driver. In view of all of that, we find that there was sufficient information to allow that officer to have a reasonable suspicion, as the case law described it, to pull that vehicle over, and therefore that evidence comes in, and therefore the conviction stands. So what do we learn from this case? What do we learn from this case? Well, we learn an important thing, and that is that everyday citizens, whether they're working at a restaurant or any place else, can report someone who appears to be drunk. And that information as to what did the individual see, what did the person who saw the drunk see, what did they observe, is going to be highly important, because it is it sufficient information to warrant a stop? Does it provide basically probable cause for the police to stop that vehicle, stop that person? So that information and the nature of it becomes extraordinarily important. But if it's all there, and if in its totality, it demonstrates that the police should, with probable cause, stop that vehicle, well, that becomes a lawful stopping, and subsequently may become a lawful arrest. Okay, we bring you this case as we bring you cases every week, so you understand how the law works. I'm David Allen.